guys. So got a few updates on both of the projects here. So we got this project rolling. I did the back suspension, and then original plan was to use this air-cooled V-twin 713 from Princess Auto. Solid engine and everything, but I just kind of, I wanted more. It's only got 21 or 22 horsepower, and since this is going to be 4x4, like it wouldn't even be as much horsepower as the DS450. So, like, I felt like it was just not enough for what I wanted, and we're trying to shoot for a better project, bigger and better. And so, also this engine, like top RPM is like 3,500 RPM, and to go with like a decent clutch setup, which is like what this frame had before was the 500 Sportsman. So this would normally have your secondary clutch on here, and then a primary going to that. But that primary clutch normally is like, that engine's peak RPM is like 6,000 RPM, and that's like almost double of what this is putting out. So I think it would be, a tough battle to actually figure out a proper clutch setup with that as well. So not only are we dealing with not quite enough horsepower and the whole clutch setup, so I kind of second guessed this whole engine, and just for fun, I took a look on the old marketplace, and we came across this bad boy right here. And this is a VTR 1000 Honda. Yeah, we're gonna try the square tubing here. It's also, I got a better connection here in Red Deer to purchase square tubing. For some reason, this round tubing is not easy to find around here. If anybody in the area knows of where I can get it, I've been buying like this stuff that I got for this roll bar is from Premier Projects, which it works good, but I'm pretty sure it's like pickled and oiled, so it's for like sprinkler lines and like high pressure stuff. So the only problem with that is it's like saturated with some kind of oil, so you almost have to like cook the oil out before you weld it, because you end up with a ton of porosity, and I had major troubles trying to get it to weld right and be strong. And this stuff here is actually plumbing tubing from like black pipe tubing from PE Mart, which it works, but it's just a little expensive. If you can buy, like the square tubing for this one, it's like for 20 feet, it's like $35 for a 6 foot length of this round tubing, black pipe tubing. It's like $16. So it's like way more expensive for really no reason. So yeah, if somebody could give me some insight to where to get some proper, round tubing for this kind of frame and able to bend and weld, and would make my life a lot easier. But yeah, today we're working on the DS450, and I've actually been working on this for, the past week or so. We had, I took it up to a family friend's place, and noticed that the oil reservoir was overflowing, and smelled like gas. So it felt really thin, and you could hear the engine kind of making noise and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, that does not sound good. It sounds like it could be something major. So I tested every possible test I could do on this thing. Put new spark plugs in. I thought maybe it wasn't burning enough of the fuel that was injected in there or whatever. I'm not even sure. So I put new spark plugs in there. It actually seemed to run better with more spark plugs or new spark plugs. And then, but then it was still seemed like it was putting fuel into the oil. And, uh, and so we did a compression test. The compression is okay, but there's no real solid way to do a compression test on these DS450s because they have a decompression setup on there. I'm not even 100% sure, but just from reading on forums and stuff, I've read that there's no um, real accurate way to check compression on these. I mean, you can put a compression tester on there, and I was getting like 90 pounds, which isn't too bad, but it should be, up over 100. But even at that point, I'm not even sure if, it's accurate. So, but it's got lots of power still. Like, that's definitely not a problem. And so we kind of ruled that out. And then, so then I thought, well, maybe it needs a valve lash adjustment. So I took the valve cover off and we got it to top dead center and checked the clearances with feeler gauges. And we're within spec. So that's definitely not the case. And so then I went to, well, okay, maybe the fuel injector is overfueling or like it's not sealing when it's under pressure but not supposed to be spraying. And so I took the intake manifold off, looked in there, and it wasn't leaking. And I thought, well, maybe it's just overfueling. It goes through its cycle, the valve closes, and it's still spraying fuel. So didn't really have a conclusive test on that. But I cleaned it with injector cleaner, took the little filter out of the end of the injector, cleaned that, put it all back together, and then kind of just spent like a couple days reading forums and like old recent YouTube videos and just hours of trying to figure out why this thing is pouring fuel into the oil reservoir. And I figured, like it's probably because, this is far from the stock setup. Normally it goes from here down a tube and does like a little weird bend and then into an airbox. And then the exhaust, like normally it does come out here, but it goes down alongside the engine and then normally would come out and then pass the back seat of the quad. So I was thinking, maybe all of that combined is just throwing the computer way off. And so I read a thing about this pink wire hack or whatever you want to call it. If you cut this little right out of the ECM, there's like a big loom of wires, and then just randomly there's a little chunk of pink wire that sticks out, and it's just in a little loop. And these guys are all saying if you cut this wire, then it lets the ECM know to go into a race tune. And it seems like I did quite a bit of research on it before, and guys are saying, yeah, cut the pink wire if you want to run no airbox and a pipe. And I'm like, well, if you think about it, that's essentially what we did here. Is basically running like it would without an airbox. And with a slip-on pipe, you're essentially giving it more flow. To my understanding, anyways, if somebody else has a little more insight to that, then let me know. But and then I was thinking, well, I don't think I've actually been using the right oil. So we've gone through a few different oils here. We did this 1040, which is too heavy. And then we did this 040, which is, I think, too light. So then I went right with like factory recommendations, like the BRP oil. So we went and bought their actual oil, recommended oil. And so put this in there with the actual amount, 1.9 quarts or whatever of it. And then put the oil in there. And then I started reading up on oil and stuff for this thing. And everybody's saying you have to check it with the engine up to temperature already. So you bring it up to temperature, and then you turn it off, and then you pull the dipstick and you look. And so I wasn't doing that before. So I was just checking the oil and it was saying low. So what I think was happening was with too much oil in there, it's making everything act all weird with the chain tension around the valves, and because it all relies on oil pressure. So I ran it for a solid 20 minutes, half an hour, just in here, you know, coming on the throttle and getting it warmed up and going through like a cycle with the fan on and, you know, giving it some real test to see if I'm going to get fuel in the oil again. And yeah, check the oil now and it seems to be fine. It's not overflowing anymore. And then with the fuel in the oil, like every freaking seal in this engine was leaking because the oil was so thin from the fuel. And so it just looked terrible. And I was even getting like oil out of the intake, blown out of the intake, and like the whole filter's kind of saturated. So, but now after this oil change and using the right oil and the right amount of oil, it seems to be running all right. And I was having troubles with, it seemed like it was idling too high. But I don't know, it's hard to go off of, because I don't remember, you know, like if this normally has, just because of what it is, it's a kind of a high performance DS, like the 450. So maybe it's just generally normally a higher idling engine. But it seems like after even I cut the pink wire, the idle came down, and it definitely sounds different. Performance-wise, I'm not sure if it even, I'm assuming it did something because it sounds different even just sitting here and going on the throttle just by hearing it. But yeah, I would take it for a tour, but apparently we're on third strike here in the neighborhood. They got a cranky neighbor that's been ratting me out to the condo board. And so every time I pull this thing out of the garage, I get a warning from condo board and bylaw saying that my next strike is either impound or a fine. So yeah, now every time I go to test this thing, I pretty much got to load it up and go somewhere. The only terrible thing is, you know, we're in Red Deer here. There's nothing too close by at all to go just for a test trip, especially if we do some changes like we have done and you get out there and it lasts, you know, 5 minutes and something breaks or isn't what it's supposed to be, then it's quite a long trip just for nothing really. And so I'm not really sure what we're going to do. But for now, what I am doing is I'm just kind of getting everything as close to finished on this thing as possible. I'm right now getting everything prepped for paint. So what I did was I took out the entire rear end is all taken apart, and then I've been kind of all the welds that I couldn't get to before and all the welds that didn't really look that good, I've kind of patched up, and now I'm just hitting it with flapper wheel and wire wheel, getting it all cleaned up and ready for paint. I definitely wish I could have a better welder setup. It's just, yeah, I wish it was more. It's hard to know for sure of penetration with this low amperage welder, flux core. I don't know, and I don't really know enough about welding either, so I mean, it's held up the way it is so far, but you know, we want it to last. And at some point I'll probably end up selling this thing to fund that thing and maybe better welder. So yeah, that's what we're doing. Took that off. We've welded up all the imperfections, and we're gonna do that to the top link, and then do that to the bottom links, and then kind of go around the whole frame. I'm gonna take some of the electrical apart and tidy it up, and finish everything up, clean up all the frame, and then I'm gonna paint all the frame, because as you can tell, even just for the few rips that we have done, it's definitely starting to rust pretty good. So we'll get that all cleaned up, painted. It'll look a lot nicer. I'm thinking about going yellow with these coils to match the front. And I'm also thinking about doing this rear bearing holder thing, diff, in yellow to kind of match the yellow shocks. But yeah, I'll take the fuel tank off, take the battery out, and clean that all up, paint it all. And then probably gonna take the steering wheel off and mount it straighter. I know it's definitely not straight now. But yeah, here we go. We're gonna get set up here to carry on with completing.
I always feel like somebody's watching me, and I have no privacy. Oh, I always feel like somebody's watching me. Tell me, is it just a dream? I always feel like somebody's watching me, and I have no privacy. Oh, I always feel like somebody's watching me.
So now we got our kind of wishbone here. Clean that up and clean out some of those welds, maybe re-weld some of them. And then I got our links. They're actually not too bad. I just gotta clean them up to paint them, really. And I left originally this stud in the middle, just not welded into the nut or into the heim joint, and it's supposed to be, you know, solid on the heim joint or the link. So I don't know, I know normally heim joints have you know, the stud that is attached to them, but these are galvanized, so I might just weld it on the actual link side. And then you can adjust it just by threading the heim joint in and out. So we'll do that. So I ran out of time here at this part with days off, so I went ahead and did it without recording. I painted the frame and painted all the rear pieces, and put it back together. And yeah, here's kind of a fast forward, and here's how it looks. So we ended up painting all the front end components, the shock and the front A arms, and it was all done with bed liner, and just because I wanted some really durable paint to hold up against everything, and yeah, this is how it turned out.
I was born in the fate of the dirty is my only home. And the place is a band. They call me righteous mom.
So with all the power being good and the engine running right, I was kind of trying to see how much bottom end power I had, trying to pop some wheelies, trying to do some good starts, and I figured out from trying to do the wheelies that the throttle is just too hard to kind of finesse. It's really chunky and hard to do. So next video is gonna have us making a new throttle setup for it, and maybe even brake lever setup. This what's on there right now is just kind of awkward and not user friendly, so that'll be in the next one.